One night, while looking out of a hole in the ground, a guy found himself incredibly shocked as he thought he had been reborn. Trying to get out of the hole, the guy could hardly do anything as the body seemed incredibly stiff to him. He even thought that the owner of the body was starving, and that's why his body was in such a state. The last thing the guy remembered about his life was sitting quietly in front of his computer at home and just downloaded the game Plants vs. Zombies Addendum onto his computer. As soon as he opened the game, his screen went black. When he opened his eyes, however, he found himself in this strange place. He even started complaining about his life and that he should not have downloaded the pirated version of the game and then the mod for this game. Suddenly, in front of him, he saw a nameplate on the pit he had just climbed out of. At the same moment, scraps of memories rushed into his head. The guy whose body he moved into was called Jiang Wei, and the pit he crawled out of was his grave. The guy even complained, because if he had been in this place earlier, he would have even been able to talk to the owner of the body. However, now that the new Jiang Wei had now taken up residence in his body, so the pit had to be buried as soon as possible so as not to attract unnecessary attention. Suddenly, the space around the guy lit up with a green light. Jiang Wei thought that he had gotten a portable transmigration system after all, as if he was in a novel. However, there was no limit to his surprise when he discovered that the system looked just like the one in the game. It was possible to plant as many as 54 squares with various plants. Opening the spiritual plant guide, he began to familiarize himself with the plants available to him. The first was spiritual sunflower, which required a unit of spiritual chi to plant. Spiritual sunflower could produce a unit of spiritual chi per day. Spiritual sunflower twins already produced 2 units of spiritual chi per day. Spiritual sunflower empress would already be able to produce 20 units of spiritual chi per day. Further improvements were unknown. Spiritual chi units were the total amount of spiritual energy in a person's first-level body. The guy was surprised after learning all this information about the plant. He even thought that it was as if he had entered the world of cultivation. Even an ordinary sunflower in this world could produce energy. Turning his attention to the other plant, he couldn't help but notice that the pea in this world had a strange name: Bean Brother. The power of each of his attacks was comparable to that of a person who had reached the highest level of chi refining stage refinement. Bean Brother twins produced 2 attacks at the same time. Wild Bean Brother produced 8 attacks at the same time. The third Bean Brother enhancement was also unknown. Jiang Wei immediately noticed that every single plant in this world could be improved. He even wondered if he could transform Bean Brother into Bean Emperor. The guy realized that the world of immortal cultivators appeared before him. Therefore, a ghostly hope appeared in front of him for a moment that once he reached a high level, he would be able to return to Earth. Spiritual energy in this world was the most valuable resource for refinement. If he could obtain a unit of spiritual chi every day and plant the entire area with spiritual sunflower, it would be incredibly awesome. After all, he would then be able to obtain 55 units of spiritual chi daily, and that was an incredible fortune. Jiang Wei was already about to plant the spiritual sunflower. Suddenly, he heard some noise, as if someone had arrived at the graveyard. The guy tried to return to his place in the pit. He could not understand who could wander in such a wilderness. To accomplish what he had planned, he needed to make sure that no one could find out about his return. His body was too stiff, so he needed to hide. Suddenly, a young girl appeared in front of his grave, begging the guy to let her see her brother one last time. The tears from the girl's eyes could not stop. The guy behind her noted for the umpteenth time that her brother was dead. He told the girl to hurry up and throw the papers into the pit, and then he was going to burn the corpse with his fire. After that, he was going to marry the girl. He even declares that the girl is lucky to be chosen by a cultivator like him. The sister begs the guy not to burn her brother's body, plus she reminds him that the guy and her brother were best friends. Jiang Wei recognized the girl's voice. The girl's name was Jiang Qian, and she was Jiang Wei's younger sister. The guy remembered that the original Jiang Wei had died while climbing up the mountain to get herbs to earn money for his sister's studies. The guy who came with the girl was known as Lin Hao. After passing the exam, he moved on to the chi refining stage. He managed to take advantage of Jiang Wei's death and intimidate Jiang Qian. Her sister couldn't calm down. She felt sorry that her brother had devoted his entire life to her and didn't even have time to get married. She remembered her brother reassuring her when she was afraid of ghosts. Her sister complained that she hadn't had time to weave a linen garment for her brother before he died, so she asked her brother to wear it now. The girl continued to grieve for her brother who had passed away at such an early age, and she didn't understand how she could live without her brother. Lin Hao became furious when he heard the girl's words. He gave her 50 grams of silver, which would be enough for food and clothing for a year, and she spent it on this piece of cloth. He commanded that the girl obediently serve him from now on. The girl, having accomplished everything she wanted for the last time, tried to hit her head on the rock. However, Lin Hao grabbed her by the neck and was surprised at the girl's insolence, as he had already bought her. And then he decided to punish the girl by pointing out her inferior position in their family. Jiang Wei was tired of putting up with Lin Hao's words and actions, and had no intention of leaving his new sister in trouble. He grabbed Lin Hao's leg and asked if he had stopped being human when he became a cultivator. With a zombie look, Jiang Wei wondered if his so-called friend had decided to abuse his sister in his absence. Lin Hao was incredibly scared, for he knew that Jiang Wei was dead, so he didn't realize what kind of creature was in front of him. Jiang Qian was incredibly happy. Tears of joy were pouring from her eyes. She was so happy that her brother had come to see her. Lin Hao was too scared and thought that it was impossible. After all, he had definitely seen that Jiang Wei was dead. However, he remembered that maybe the yin qi had not left Jiang Wei's body yet, causing Jiang Wei to turn into a zombie. Lin Hao heard that if he poured molten iron over the corpse, it would gain extraordinary strength and become invincible. Lin Hao was incredibly happy and thought that even the gods favored him. He thought that brother and sister were his gifts of destiny. He decided that Jiang Wei would become his guardian and Jiang Qian would become his concubine. The cocky Lin Hao was going to show off his new skills and his jade sword. Jiang Qian didn't stand by. She pounced on the guy and told her brother to run away. However, this infuriated Lin Hao, and he declared that the girl's brother had been dead for a long time. He told the girl to stay out of his way and elbowed her, after which the girl fell down and lost consciousness. Jiang Wei was not going to let go of Lin Hao's lunges towards him and his sister. He wants to remind the taste of fists for Lin Hao, who had apparently forgotten it already. Lin Hao, on the other hand, only mocks the guy for going to fight the cultivator with his fists. Jiang Wei was well aware that Lin Hao had been training for the past half a year. And the guy's newfound system only had spiritual sunflower. He even thought of planting Bean Brother, as he couldn't give up. The guy realized that he needed to fulfill the last will of the owner of his new body. The system was not easy to master, so he needed prompts. He only looked through the plant directory, but he couldn't understand anything. Suddenly, he saw himself in the system window. A regular zombie, a recently deceased human who was immune to pain. The next upgrade was already a head guard zombie. Takes care of the brain, increasing resilience. The next upgrade was the Iron Head zombie. This zombie's head and body are as hard and strong as iron. Further upgrades were still unknown. Lin Hao went on the attack swinging his blade and didn't leave the guy any time to think. Jiang Wei realized that an ordinary zombie was completely useless. The guy knew very well that fighting an immortal cultivator without upgrade was pointless, and he didn't even know how to obtain an upgrade. At the very last moment, a rather strange theory popped into his head, and he decided to eat the spiritual sunflower. Lin Hao swung his jade sword and touched Jiang Wei's shoulder. He was surprised because nothing happened, and the newly risen zombie was able to easily block his attack. Jiang Wei confirmed his theory that zombies were destined to eat plants. The zombie's body had absorbed the spiritual energy. Jiang Wei was shocked himself, for he was now a grand master of the first stage of qi purification, even though he was a zombie. Jiang Wei remarks that the path of immortality is a long one, and that it seems Lin Hao had only been practicing for half a year, and had only recently stepped into the qi refining stage. He wondered how Lin Hao would be able to break through his defenses. Jiang Wei declared that it was his turn to attack. He opened his mouth like a zombie and rushed over to try to eat Lin Hao to avenge his sister. Lin Hao was too much scared and tried to scare the zombie away that the zombie couldn't kill him since he was immortal. From being so badly frightened, Lin Hao lost consciousness. Jiang Wei remembered that zombies scare people so much that they can die just from the mere sight of them. Jiang Wei remembered that Lin Hao had not been very brave since he was a child, and after becoming immortal, Lin Hao seemed to have lost this quality. The system immediately reported that a new body had been found and asked the guy if he wanted it. Once the guy accepted the system's offer, then the system once again reported that the guy had obtained a new zombie body of the normal type and that the attributes had been synchronized. So weak was the immortal cultivator named Lin Hao. Jiang Wei was glad that the zombie handbook could help him collect new bodies. He was already anticipating that he would be able to find a graveyard of gods or demons, and then his life would become even more beautiful. Glancing at the system window, he noticed that the body and all attributes were synchronized with the main body. He realized that he had obtained the abilities of immortal Lin Hao and had reached the high level of the first stage of qi purification. Attributes: inferior water spirit root. After examining his body, the guy surprisingly noticed that his body was more mobile than before. Therefore, he thought that it was all because of Lin Hao's abilities. Jiang Wei was happy, because now he could fully realize that the system he had obtained was peerless. He still had a lot more to learn, for he didn't even realize what he should perfect yet. However, looking at the vastness that was opening before him, he decided that he first needed to find a place to grow plants and zombies. 3 days later, a guy was wandering through the forest with his sister. When his sister stopped, he asked her to walk faster because they needed to get to Shengjia village on time. The girl still couldn't believe that her brother was alive and tears came to her eyes. The brother tries to reassure his sister that he had already explained to her that his death was fake. He was alive now, so he didn't understand why his sister didn't believe him. The sister is not so stupid and has already noticed that her brother doesn't eat, drink, or even get tired. And yet her brother wasn't like this before the alleged fake death. The guy notices that this process is called the last shining of the setting sun. God did not accept him and let him move on with his life. However, the sister took 3 steps back as if she didn't believe her brother's words at all. Suddenly, the forest went dark, and the girl was left alone with her new brother. Jiang Wei, with the intimidating look of anyone, slowly approached the girl and assured that he would not harm her. He even made up a story that Lin Hao just wanted to go to the toilet, and so he went back home. Jiang Qian started questioning her suspicious brother. She inquired about the name of the grandmother who used to treat them to steamed buns when they were kids. The guy assumed that her name was Auntie Mo. Such an answer did not satisfy his sister, and she started to run away, for it was Auntie Ha. Jiang Wei did not remember anything about it. His sister then asked what time the grandfather living next door woke up to weave baskets. Jiang Wei assumed that grandfather was doing it at 4 hours and 30 minutes in the morning, but the answer was wrong. The sister asked the questions again and again, hoping to get at least one correct answer. However, the brother failed the test again and again and answered incorrectly. The guy was disappointed because Jiang Wei had died too long ago and his brain cells had long since died, so the guy couldn't remember anything from Jiang Wei's life. Jiang Qian really wanted to believe that her brother was alive, but reality told her the harsh truth that it was not really her brother in front of her. There was only one thing left of Jiang Wei to the guy, and that was what he could detect in the system. Jiang Wei was very worried about his sister, so the system asks for the guy to provide his sister with a stable life. The reward for completing this task was to unlock Headguard Zombie and improve his body characteristics. In the end, eventually Jiang Qian confesses that she is well aware that her brother is already dead, so she asks that the creature in front of her not lie to her. She is even willing to have the creature eat her. However, in return, she asks that the creature not mock her brother's body and let her brother rest in peace. The guy realized at this moment just how lucky Jiang Wei was to have a sister. Deciding not to torture the girl, the guy confesses that he really is not her brother and that he himself does not know who he is. However, he assures the girl that her brother left a task for him to make his sister happy. The girl ran up to the guy and hugged him. She begged the guy to let her see her brother. At this point, the guy, for the umpteenth time, realized that he was the walking dead. Even though using Lin Hao's body, he was able to revive his current body, he realized that he would never get tired, hungry, or want to sleep. Even if he wanted to cry, he wouldn't be able to cry. The guy only sadly notices that perhaps his heart and emotions will gradually die too. Now he could not fully understand whether he would return to the earth as the same person. Jiang Qian soon calmed down when she received the answer to her question. After a while, the brother and sister arrived at Shengjia village. There was no way they could return to their home village. Lin Hao had devastated the brother and sister's house, and besides, the villagers should not know about Jiang Wei's return. With the body of the first stage qi refining body, Jiang Wei smashed the stone wall with a single blow, so the village chief had no choice but to believe that the guy was an immortal cultivator. However, after that, the wall had to be rebuilt for a long time because it was property damage. The money the guy found in Lin Hao's pocket, he had to give in exchange for the village chief adopting his sister, Jiang Qian. The village chief refused, but Jiang Wei insisted. Jiang Qian fell asleep quite quickly as soon as she lay down on the bed. The guy realized that the girl must have been exhausted over the past few days. Furthermore, he realized that the mission he had promised to accomplish for Jiang Wei had been completed. Jiang Wei realized that the road of immortality was too long, so he would not be able to take such a small girl with him. Looking at the sleeping girl, the guy promises that he will come back for her when he becomes famous. Looking at his inventory, he complains that he has nothing but the sword that Lin Hao used to wield. The system reported something about the sword, that the iron plating provides low protection for the whole body, and this information didn't please the guy. 3 days later, Jiang Wei was alone in the forest. It had already been 6 days since he had awakened in this world. In the past few days, he had planted 5 rows of 30 spiritual sunflower each. At midnight of the 7th day, he should already have 32 units of spiritual energy. He wasn't going to stop there and decided to plant something else. Examining his system and other plants, he came to the conclusion that other plants would help him increase his defense. Jiang Wei decided that the remaining 4 rows would be beneficial to plant beans, walnuts, dwarf winter melons, and sweet potato. After that, he still had 3 extra units of spiritual qi left, which meant he needed to plant more spiritual sunflower to strengthen his body. He calculated that he would receive 31 units of spiritual qi every day, which was 12 times the attack power of Bean Brother in the first stage of qi refining, 6 times the damage of nuts in the 5th stage of qi refining, and 4 times the damage of dwarf winter melon in the 5th stage of qi refining. He also wanted to set up 2 sweet potato mines that would deal equal damage at the 5th stage of qi purification. With a sinister smirk on his face, he was about to complete Lin Hao's life mission. Jiang Wei nobly notices that the guy's body had been given a second chance. Finally, he looked at the missions in Lin Hao's life. A flood of Lin Hao's life missions rushed at him. Mission number 1 is to mess with Jiang Wei and take away his sister. Mission 2, take the herbs to the Jade Spring. Mission 3, stay with Lin Shishi's older sister forever. Mission 4, stay with Xia Yun's older sister forever. Mission 5, stay with Big Sister Chi Siru forever. Mission 6, invite Big Sister Li Area to change her name and stay with her forever. Mission 7, avoid zombie tide. However, despite Lin Hao's lowly desires, Jiang Wei found something interesting. He was curious about what zombie tide was. Jiang Wei decided that the first thing he needed to do was to find the Jade Spring. Looking at the plaque in his hands, the guy thought that this was the item that would point him in the direction of the Jade Spring. Pointing in one direction around him, he noticed that the glow was much stronger in one particular direction. Jiang Wei decided to choose Lin Hao's body for this mission. Advancing towards the supposed location of the Jade Spring, the guy stopped abruptly when he heard a noise. Someone was complaining that they were having trouble exterminating the 2-headed wolfhounds. Climbing onto a tree branch, Jiang Wei noticed that not far away from him, several 2-headed wolfhounds surrounded the 2 girls. One of the girls complained that she had no spiritual energy left at all. The dark-haired girl asked the other girl to hold on, because the brothers would soon come and rescue them. The girl with blonde hair couldn't activate the jade sword technique 3 times in a row, so it was hard for her. The guy recognized one of the girls, for it was Eria, Lin Hao's older sister. He had a great chance to save the girl and return with her. The guy was aware of his strength, and he could deal with the monsters that were in front of him. Eria tried to reassure the girl that help was on the way. At this moment, Jiang Wei, in the guise of Lin Hao, jumped out of the bushes and assured that he had come to help his sisters. Suddenly, the system announced that the guy had found materials that could be used to grow plants, and the system wondered if the guy wanted to collect the materials. Jiang Wei couldn't miss such a moment because it was like a bargain promotion at the store to buy goods. Therefore, he asked the sisters to wait a little longer as he needed to see the instruction manual. The girls were even confused in such a situation. However, these cute and helpless girls, after a second, became incredibly furious because it seemed to them that Lin Hao seemed to be mocking them. The system took the body of the two-headed wolfhound and asked if the guy wanted to use this monster on Spiritual Sunflower. That was exactly what the guy wanted, so he agreed to the system's suggestion. At the same moment, the guy saw the two-headed wolfhound start biting Spiritual Sunflower, and after just a moment, the two began to connect. Spiritual Sunflower began to split into two bodies, and then the system reported that the guy had upgraded Spiritual Sunflower to Spiritual Sunflower twins, doubling the spiritual energy. Jiang Wei's eyes lit up and saliva came out of his mouth because it was exactly the same as the pirated version of the game he had originally downloaded. The author hints that we should never download pirated versions of games to avoid getting into this situation. The story with the girl was curious, for he did not pretend further and confessed to the girl that he was not her brother. He could have said something about remembering his past life or that he hit his head and temporarily lost his memory, but he chose to admit right away that he was a completely different person. He was excited because when Spiritual Sunflower and the two-headed wolfhounds joined forces, Spiritual Sunflower had turned into Spiritual Sunflower twins. Looking at the number of two-headed wolfhounds that were in the vicinity, it made the guy incredibly happy. 2 dead and 6 living two-headed wolfhounds could double the effectiveness of Spiritual Sunflower's Qi 9. When he happily ran out to help his sisters, he even had saliva dripping with anticipation. The blonde-haired girl asked the guy to be careful as he lunged at the two-headed wolfhounds with his bare hands. The guy his two-headed wolfhounds and asked the girl to pay attention to what an incredibly strong grip he had. After easily dispatching the two-headed wolfhounds, he asked the girls if he could keep the monsters' bodies. Arya didn't mind the idea and gave her permission. After receiving the permission, the guy immediately ran to finish off the others. Although the girls were very worried about him, he began to boast that he could easily defeat the evil monsters. As she watched the guy fight the monsters, Arya immediately noticed that there was something wrong with Lin Hao, that his movements were too erratic. She couldn't believe that Lin Hao was fighting such monsters with his bare hands and screaming like that. The other girl reprimanded her. After all, one shouldn't speak so badly about someone who protects them so zealously. The girl said that she always disliked Lin Hao, but at the critical moment he didn't abandon them like the other brothers did. The girl cheered for the guy in her heart, promising to even reward the guy if he won. Jiang Wei, who pretended to be Lin Hao, was having fun dealing with the monsters at this time. He happily noticed that his attack power was 12 times higher than the first stage of Qi purification, so he could deal with such monsters in just one strike. He easily defeated one monster after another while smiling at the same time. When he was done, he noted happily that he and his sisters could now return. Turning around, the guy finally noticed that the facial expressions of the girls were clearly not showing any sympathy for him. The girls were incredibly frightened, refusing to believe that the Lin Hao they knew was in front of them. Jiang Wei was surprised. He even thought that the girls had revealed his disguise. He didn't expect cultivators to be so perceptive. The guy finally began to realize that it seemed like he had aroused suspicion because he wasn't using his usual martial techniques. The girls were still incredibly scared. Jiang Wei wanted to keep his secret no matter what, so for a moment he even wanted to get rid of the girls. However, he quickly gave up on this thought as he didn't want to do this to innocent people. The girl asked that the guy deal with the two-headed wolfhound, or else he would die. Only after her words did the guy notice that he was bitten by a monster on his left arm. This moment was a revelation to Jiang Wei, because he thought that the strength of a zombie was a strong defense, but it turned out that zombies simply do not feel pain. The guy was incredibly upset because he realized that he couldn't feel anything. The path of immortality had robbed him of his senses and simple human pleasures. Seeing such a distraught guy, the girls even wondered if he was okay. To begin with, Jiang Wei decided to remove the monsters' bodies. The girl didn't understand why the guy wouldn't just put the trophies in the bag before the monster corpses attracted other beasts. Arya also pointed out that without Lin Hao, they wouldn't have been able to deal with the local monsters. However, the guy was absolutely not listening to them at this moment as he was engrossed in planting plants. His collection of spiritual sunflower twins had been replenished. He could now obtain 9 units of spiritual energy from the air every day. He didn't even know what to do with all this spiritual energy. Finally, hearing his name being called again, the guy wondered what the sisters were up to. The girl admits that they had been fighting for so long that they had used up all the elixirs, so they were incredibly hungry. Arya pointed out that the two-headed wolfhounds had just moved to the chi refining stage, so the monster meat had to be of high quality. Therefore, the girl wanted to divide the monster meat into pieces and all eat it together. However, this idea was absolutely disliked by Jiang Wei, as he was trying for himself by destroying the monsters. The girl was surprised, but then asked for just a little bit of monster meat to satisfy her hunger. Arya didn't push the guy, but took the pouch in her hands and said that earlier she and her brother Lin had managed to kill a ferocious bear to prepare it for the welcome dinner. The girl took out part of the bear from the bag, noting that it should be enough for them. Jiang Wei couldn't take his eyes off the storage bag. He remembered that the bag was the same one Lin Hao had, but unfortunately he couldn't open it. At this moment, the system informed him that he had found materials that could be used to grow plants. Without hesitation, the guy told the system to gather the necessary materials. The ferocious bear that was still lying in front of them a short while ago instantly disappeared. The girls were shocked that their sustenance, the ferocious bear, had disappeared. Since there was no one else around besides them, the girls were incredibly angry at the guy, saying that he was out of line. Jiang Wei didn't expect to reflexively do this. He tried to justify himself to the girls. However, at this moment, the ground beneath their feet shook and split open. A zombie's arm stuck out from the ground. Arya noticed that zombie tide had been used. She told the others to go back as soon as possible so that they would have a chance of survival. At that moment, a guy and two girls turned their attention to the sky. In the sky, there was a little girl in armor in the air. She was hovering above the ground. Turning his attention to the little girl in armor, the guy noticed that she was incredibly cool. He didn't hold back, showing the girl a rather unflattering gesture of his middle finger on his right hand. However, at that very moment, the little girl in armor disappeared as if she had teleported somewhere. The zombie's hands continued to stick out of the ground. The girl was frightened and fell to the ground, although she wanted to run as far away from zombie tide as possible. Arya couldn't understand why this was happening to them either. Her fighting spirit was broken. Thoughts of imminent defeat had already caught up with her. One of the zombies stuck his hand out from the ground too close to the girl, grabbing her leg. Jiang Wei rushed to the girl's aid, using a fusion of Bean Brother and Ferocious Bear along the way. However, the fusion failed. The guy was upset that the fusion was only partial, noting that perhaps the full fusion didn't happen because the Ferocious Bear was basic. Even though the fusion was only partial, Jiang Wei's leg kick was incredibly powerful when he attacked the monster. It was once, for even a 3,000-year-old tree could be broken from such a kick. When one of the zombies lifted the girl up and she was crying for help, the guy admired the girl's beauty for a while longer. After admiring the beauty of the girl, he ran up to her, took her in his arms and kicked the zombies aside. However, at this moment, the zombies were already surrounding them from all sides. Jiang Wei immediately suggested that the girls run away so that they wouldn't be cornered. Arya didn't know where they should go because not taking a careful route might cause them to run into the very epicenter of the zombies. The girl confidently stated that she knew where they should run to, and pointing in the direction reported that it was obvious from the height that there were no zombies that way. They couldn't escape without having fun, as Jiang Wei began to attack any zombie that looked at him obliquely. He kicked and beat the poor zombies. 3 hours later they did stop. The girls were exhausted and the guy didn't even break a sweat. Arya wondered if Lin Hao practiced the art of body purification. The girl was also grateful to him since he was the only reason they were able to survive. He had already started fantasizing about how Arya and the other girl were going to repay him even though they had absolutely no money. Coming back to reality, the guy realized that if he did nothing, his identity would be revealed too quickly. He immediately turned on all his acting skills, complaining that there was something wrong with his 3 lower limbs, that he needed to lie down on the ground so that the evil energy wouldn't wreak havoc on him. Plus, he needed to meditate. That's how bad he felt. In Chinese martial arts, the body is divided into different limbs. The 3 lower limbs are the abdomen, crotch, and legs, so the girls were disappointed as they didn't expect the guy to be so direct about his problems. After deciding to dig into Lin Hao's memories, he discovered that zombie tide was caused by the grief of a heavenly lord. Due to Lin Hao's low status, he didn't know anything else. Jiang Wei didn't know about the division of refinement realms, nor about Qigong training methods and heavenly treasures, and after all, this information would be useful for refinement. Just at that moment, another man came to them. He immediately said that he was glad that the sisters were safe. The girls were glad that Brother Wang had come to rescue them. Arya immediately began to heap praise on the man, saying that he was the genius of the Qi purification third stage, and that without him, it would be impossible for them to find their way back. However, the guy couldn't be fooled, and he was immediately wary because Wang had gone to get help and returned alone. Wang was happy to meet the guy. At the same moment, his face changed to a frightening face. He stated that he didn't mind killing another one. The girls was incredibly scared, not understanding at all what the man was talking about. Wang, like a typical villain, immediately started telling them his plan. He was going to take all their collected herbs to bribe the elders. In 3 days, he would be hired by another sect and change his status as a disciple. He released his spiritual energy, which terrified the girls. Wang had already anticipated that he would now become an inner disciple, which meant he would have better resources, a high level and regular lectures. He was glad that he now had a chance to achieve perfection. Instantly appearing in front of the girls, Wang grabbed them by the throat. He told them to give everything they had, and then when he became an inner disciple, he could choose them as concubines. The girls begged Wang not to do this. After all, they too needed to complete the task so they wouldn't be kicked out. Jiang Wei seemed to have been waiting for this moment. He couldn't wait to conduct his experiment. He took out a spiritual sunflower and began to eat it. Wang looked at the spiritual sunflower for just a second and was mesmerized. He saw that spiritual sunflower's spiritual energy was incredibly strong. He immediately dismissed the girls, rushing towards the guy at full speed, as he wanted to take away such a high-quality treasure from him to increase his status. Jiang Wei calmly continued eating the spiritual sunflower. He told Wang to take it away from him if he was so hungry. Wang continued to insist, but Jiang Wei refused to give it back, noting that Wang didn't seem to like watching others eat. So Jiang Wei decided to run away from this place. Wang couldn't leave it like that and chased after Jiang Wei to take away the spiritual sunflower. The girls were shocked by Wang's action. Arya was surprised that Lin Hao had already saved their lives several times today. After deciding that Lin Hao could handle Wang, they decided to return home as soon as possible. After a while, it had already gotten dark in the forest. Wang lost sight of his opponent. At that moment, Wang noticed a large number of zombies moving towards him, surrounding him from all sides. Jiang Wei took off his Lin Hao disguise and hid among the zombies, trying to sneak up on Wang unnoticed. He wanted to return to Jiang Wei's body, so Wang couldn't recognize him. To his surprise, the other zombies didn't attack him, but took him as one of their own. Wang did not restrain himself, immediately taking out the Jade Sword of Light. Jiang Wei wondered how much energy such a sword consumed. Using the Jade Sword of Light, Wang easily sliced the zombie that approached him. He even told Lin Hao to come out immediately, as he could easily kill the zombie. Wang destroyed one zombie after another, so Jiang Wei just fell to the ground, pretending to be defeated. He thought about how sages are not intimidated by losing. He convinced himself that he was not afraid of Wang, but just wanted to save his body. Besides, he remembered that he had made a promise to Jiang Qian that he wanted to fulfill at all costs, so he didn't want to lose Jiang Wei's body even more. Wang was angry that Lin Hao had disappeared as soon as he entered the forest, and now he had to fight off numerous zombies. He decided to climb onto a tree branch since he needed to wait it out in a safe place and then light some incense. Wang was frustrated, for if his plan didn't work, he would have to leave empty-handed. He even almost cried when he imagined Lin Hao laughing at him right now. Wang just wanted Lin Hao to give up his loot. With that spiritual plant he would take away from Lin Hao, he would be able to immediately join the alchemist cult. He would even be happy to join as an apprentice in this organization. After all, it was much better than becoming food for zombies. Suddenly, Wang sensed the familiar fragrance of a spiritual plant nearby. Jiang Wei stepped aside and observed. He decided to act on the rule that the best defense is offense. Jiang Wei couldn't wait to see how Wang would be able to deal with Bean Brother. The guy purposely put spiritual sunflower behind the trees so that Wang could successfully detect spiritual sunflower. Naive Wang quickly discovered spiritual sunflower and rushed towards it. He even thought that stupid Lin Hao had just gotten scared and threw spiritual sunflower in this place, or the zombies had killed Lin Hao. After grabbing the spiritual sunflower, he happily ran to give it to the alchemist elder. However, at this moment, the tree in front of him seemed to bend, and Wang hit his face into the tree. Jiang Wei hit him with the tree with such force as if he was about to hit a home run, so expecting nothing, Wang flew back with incredible force. Jiang Wei reprimanded Wang for betraying his younger sisters by acting like a heartless and narcissistic liar. The guy reminded him that he had forgotten about his heart while improving his skills. Noticing the movement, he thought that Wang was threatening him again, so he was going to teach him a lesson. However, at this moment, he noticed that Wang seemed to be dead, which was not surprising considering the force with which Wang was hit in the face by the tree. The system at this point reported that it had discovered a new body and asked if the guy wanted to pick up the body. Jiang Wei was incredibly surprised that he was able to deal with Wang with just one blow. In addition, the guy recognized that the system skill that allowed him to collect everything was incredibly useful. With the skill he had gained, he was able to hide all traces as well as get rid of the body. After taking Wang's body, he began to examine it. According to the system, Wang Tianliang was now an ordinary zombie. Attribute: lower water spirit root. He was at the third stage of chi purification. His life missions were to become an inner disciple of the Jade Spring, as well as to survive zombie tide. The reward for accomplishing life missions, however, was the discovery of new plant species. Jiang Wei became resentful that Wang Tianliang wouldn't be able to complete his second mission since he had already died. However, there was the most important upside to this confrontation. Jiang Wei had finally obtained a storage bag. In the bag, he managed to find spiritual stones, but even a bunch of such stones couldn't compare in terms of spiritual energy after just one bite of spiritual sunflower. He also managed to find bamboo slips that had one of the Jade Spring sect's mental training methods written on them. Suddenly, he smelled a strange odor, as it turned out that the bag contained the rest of the ferocious bear. Thanks to this find, he could now achieve a complete fusion of the ferocious bear and Bean brother. Also in the bag were the herbs that the entire group had gathered earlier. The most intriguing thing was that on top of everything, he had managed to find a map. He was happy, clutching everything honestly earned in battle, for he now had a lot of spiritual energy and skills. His zombie body would never get tired and hungry, so now he could train in peace to face the Lord of the Heavens. To begin with, he decided to take a look at what was marked on the map, and it indicated the cave of the two-headed wolfhounds. After realizing that the place marked on the map was not far away, he decided to go there and pick up more resources for his plants. When he arrived a while later at the entrance to the cave of the two-headed wolfhounds, which was indicated on the map, the guy didn't find anything suspicious. As he approached the cave, he noticed that it was incredibly dark. At this moment, he remembered that when he took a bite of spiritual sunflower, it would emit a faint light. However, at that moment, he remembered the incense stick he had taken from Wang. He lit the incense stick and got the light he needed to move around the cave. However, at this very moment, a large number of two-headed wolfhounds' eyes lit up from the darkness of the cave. Jiang Wei noticed that all the monsters came out to greet him, as if the obedient dogs were happy for their master to return home. At the same moment, Jiang Wei noticed that the two-headed wolfhounds were not attacking him, but were reacting to the incense stick in his hands. After realizing the actions of the two-headed wolfhounds, he threw the incense stick behind the back of the two-headed wolfhounds, and they immediately rushed towards the beckoning prey. The guy now realized that Wang Tianliang was baiting the two-headed wolfhounds on the sisters for the sake of the prey he would get afterwards. While the monsters were distracted by the incense stick, Jiang Wei attacked them from behind, chopping them down with his sword, and at this moment he was angry at Wang Tianliang. A few hours later, the guy was still in the cave of the two-headed wolfhounds. Looking at all the plants he had managed to plant, he couldn't help but be excited. All 5 rows of planted spiritual sunflower had grown into spiritual sunflower twins, so he had become even stronger. However, at this stage, there was a rather big problem in his progression. He didn't understand how he could start improving if he didn't even know the basic method of training. A cultivator who didn't even know the basic knowledge of cultivation. It was funny that the guy pretending to be Jiang Wei was now also pretending to be Lin Hao. How will he now explain where Wang Tianliang went if he meets Arya and the second girl again? Will he tell them that Wang just ran away? His adventures in his new world are just beginning, as he has only been in this world for 6 days and has already encountered so many interesting situations. A little more time passed. The spiritual sunflower twins were currently producing 60 units of qi energy daily. Together with the daily unit of qi, the total amount of qi produced was 61 qi. Thanks to Wang Tianliang's skills and memories, the guy was able to understand the stages of qi refining. It was necessary to refine qi to level 9 and then proceed to the foundation stage. Each level required 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256 units of spiritual qi. By this time, he had already eaten 5 spiritual sunflower twins and had passed the 5 stages thanks to the spiritual energy units he had obtained, but he was still lacking in skills. Spiritual roots were required to enter the path of gaining immortality. The higher the spiritual level of the roots, the more perfect the perception. There were also various immortal geniuses and divine bodies who were destined to become the heads of major sects. Although he could change bodies, but Jiang Wei's body could not be perfected, which was the biggest disadvantage. He didn't want to leave it like this and hoped to find some way around this rule. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw the zombies devouring the 2-headed wolfhounds in the cave. The guy regretfully noticed that he had been dead for so long that the zombies had begun to mistake him for one of their own. Jiang Wei wanted with all his might to prevent the sect's heads from being able to discover his true identity. He even feared that because he had been reborn as a zombie, they might even grind him into powder to use the powder as an aphrodisiac. The guy remembered that since Wang's spiritual roots were low, he had also gathered a few methods where it was necessary to replace spiritual roots, possess someone's body, exchange blood, and purify bone marrow with pills. Jiang Wei pondered over other options, for surely there must also be a legendary miracle cure and other methods that he thought could only be found by joining a sect. Looking at the system and calculating the options, the guy wanted to grow his own medicinal herbs and plant 54 plants to sell. Looking at the zombie handbook, Jiang Wei noticed that Wang Tianliang's second zombie tide mission had been completed. This news made him incredibly happy, as the information implied that the completion of the mission did not depend on the zombie body. He was glad that not all zombie bodies had proven to be useless. Whether it was the reward for Wang's past mission or resolving the suitability of Jiang Wei's body to achieve immortality, all of these were necessary for cultivation. Therefore, stopping his ponderings, the guy decided to leave the cave to become an inner disciple of the sect. 3 days later, 3 guys beat up one guy who was leaning on a rock. They told him to bring his father's axe, and then they would spare him. The bullies expected the guy to pay them back and bullied him in every way possible, believing he deserved all the abuse. At this moment, behind the guy, Jiang Wei was calmly walking his way. He touched the guy's head with his hand and asked him not to make any sudden movements as the guy's injuries were too serious. Jiang Wei self-deprecatingly recalled the story of how, in his world, a trio of fiends had beaten a teenager to death. He hasn't been able to do anything about bullies in the past, but now he will have to make similar bullies pay for their actions. The leader of the bullies was outraged that some stranger had shown up. He even promised to call his uncle if the stranger did anything. However, he could no longer do anything, and he was no longer as amused as he had been a few minutes earlier. Seeing what had happened to their leader, the other bullies were incredibly scared. At this, Jiang Wei did not stop and swung his shovel and instantly got rid of the second bully. The only surviving bully immediately fell to his knees and begged for mercy, admitting that he knew he was wrong. However, Jiang Wei believed that the guy still didn't think that he was wrong, but was just afraid and knew that he was about to die. Instantly, Jiang Wei crushed the last guy's knee with his shovel. He immediately walked over to the previously injured guy. Jiang Wei thought that the bullies had gotten what they deserved. He wondered if the guy would be able to endure a little longer. However, unfortunately, Jiang Wei came too late. The guy tortured by the bullies was already dead. The system informed him that a new body had been discovered. Without thinking for a second, the guy took the body. Suddenly, the body of the guy who was bullied by the bullies rose up. The system reported that the guy's name was Wang Fa. The last living guy from the bullies immediately shook with fear when he saw Wang Fa get up, even though he had already died earlier. To conceal his identity, Jiang Wei needed to find the bodies of recently deceased people. For the past 3 days, he couldn't massacre any of the people he met in the zombie-tied area with his own hands, and he couldn't stand by and watch them die. The guy was shaking with fear, but Jiang Wei was well aware that bullies like the guy were ignorant of morals. He remembered that the map he got from Wang showed the mark of a ferocious bear's den, so he wanted to use the hooligans as bait. Soon, the giant bear fiercely attacked the guy. The guy asked Jiang Wei for help, even offering to become his servant. Turning around, he found giant drool dripping from the bear's mouth as it looked at its prey. The bear greedily pounced on his prey, but before he died, the guy promised that he would haunt Jiang Wei even when he turned into a ghost. Jiang Wei didn't listen to him as he looked at what Wang Fa was. His attribute was a medium fire spirit root. He wasn't even a cultivator. Wang Fa's life missions were to leave the village and learn to read. As a reward, the system was willing to give a skill: reviving dead plants. Jiang Wei noted with sadness in his voice that the guy was just an innocent child. None of the guy's missions involved revenge. After studying the information, Jiang Wei lightning quickly jumped down and attacked the bear's head with his feet, easily dealing with the bear. The system also informed the guy that 3 corpses had been found and asked if he wanted to pick them up, but Jiang Wei refused the offer, wanting the hooligans' bodies to rot in this all-forgotten place. Soon Jiang Wei arrived at the sect, and it was his turn. The girl at the entrance asked who the guy was. Jiang Wei, with a strange sunflower-shaped mask on his face, said that his name was Wang Fa and that he was 13 years old. He immediately confessed that he had come to join the Jade Spring sect to gain immortality. Many people aspired to join the Jade Spring sect, but few could succeed. The girl noted with a clear annoyance in her voice that some had come here on a whim, some for family, and some had come to this place by pure chance. She reminded everyone that only 3 out of 100 mortals would be able to take the path to immortality and that talents were rare among the participants. The girl excitedly informed them that cultivation did not depend solely on talent. Perfecting medicine, perfecting weapons, developing one's mind, and practicing Taoism were all the right paths in big and small ways. She was so proud of herself because after 3 years of training, it was finally her turn to demonstrate her strength. She chose the right moment because due to the increasing frequency of zombie tide, the elders had gone to look around the neighborhood and hadn't returned yet. She told everyone to go to the trials, but to start by taking a look at her spirit shuttle. However, she was not allowed to finish, and her plans were not destined to come true, as an old man standing in the sky on a giant bird told her to stop. As soon as the old man jumped to the ground, the girl immediately greeted him. She announced that Wang Yiling's inner disciple, Wang Yiling, was welcoming Elder Ma. As soon as she said that, the elder immediately said that there were no worthy people among the people the girl had accepted this year, so he ordered everyone to be expelled. Wang Yiling was in complete shock after the elder's words. She began to complain to the elder that their Jade Spring sect branches were placed in 100,000 mountains on the orders of the main sect, and that there were currently not enough people on each mountain. She recalled that every year thousands of people came to the Jade Spring sect to be evaluated and enter the sect. However, the elder thought otherwise, because when zombie tide calmed down, all the troops would return to the main sect, and if they recruited such candidates, they would have plenty of useless people. He even reminded that someone would have to take responsibility if they took in so many useless people. The old man easily lifted all the people standing in line using a secret technique. Wang Yiling was delighted after seeing the secret art of foundation making, Chiangkun sleeve. To weed out the useless people, the elder turned everyone who came into children. He stated that it was these children who would be assessed for suitability for their sect. However, at this moment, a gigantic sword flew towards them and slammed deep into the ground in front of the table. The girl was indignant that Elder Ma thought it was acceptable to interfere in the evaluation of future sect disciples. She wondered how many privileges Elder Ma received from the mortal lords. The old man was not embarrassed in the slightest and told the approaching Jiang Ziyue, who was a senior disciple of the Sword Pavilion, that she had nothing to do with him. She remarked that having come to the sect to temporarily take over as pavilion master, Elder Ma was thoroughly enjoying his role as an official. Jiang Ziyue reminded the old man that the elder also towered above mortals, so there was no need to make things difficult for a few children. The guys standing beside her were delighted, and some even drooled at the sight of the girl. Wang Yiling was also delighted by Jiang Ziyue's appearance, greeting her enthusiastically. The old man was indignant. He reminded the girl that even though her master was the head of the sword pavilion in this sect, a girl should not disrespect her elders. He was annoyed, for the girl was undermining his authority by being unwilling to yield to him and challenging his decision. However, Jiang Ziyue did not waver under the old man's fury. She was unwilling to back down. After all, she was a disciple of the sword pavilion and must follow the right path, so she could not turn a blind eye to injustice. What would the old man do next, after seeing that some young female disciple in such a situation dared to go against his word, undermining his authority? The old man did not tolerate the disdain in his direction coming from the girl. He decided to give her a lesson, trying to test how far she had advanced in her skill in the past half a year. Sitting and eating a watermelon to the side, Jiang Wei was excited to see the battle of the sword pavilion disciple against the arrogant elder. He snuck up on Wang Yiling and asked her if she wanted to intervene in their confrontation. The girl completely failed to understand what intervention could even be talked about. Jiang Wei explained that the sect elder had gone against the rising star. He was curious about many things regarding their fight. How good were their skills? How many wins and losses did each have? He was even curious about Wang Yiling's opinion on how long the old man and girl's argument would last. Wang Yiling became furious after the guy's words and whether he didn't take Jiang Ziyue seriously. She couldn't stand the guy's disrespect towards immortals, even though the guy had passed the test. Even the old man and the girl paid attention to him. Jiang Wei proudly raised his head and declared that he did not treat immortals with disdain, but rather admired them. He thought that Elder Ma's immortal magic was admirable and elder sister Jiang was a great role model. The guy remarked that the talent of the elder and the female disciple encouraged him and the others to move towards the path of immortality. Hearing such words from the guy, Jiang Ziyue immediately apologized to Elder Ma. She noted that people were like clouds floating in the sky and carp crossing a river. Therefore, she believed that perhaps there might be a true talent among the people. She reiterated that such a rude intervention would inevitably affect the lives of others, and that was why they should evaluate each disciple. The elder did not stand aside and also recognized that the Jade Spring sect was lucky to have a female disciple like Jiang Ziyue. However, the elder immediately pointed his finger at Jiang Wei, believing that an arrogant kid like Jiang Wei had too bad temper. He believed that the kid's entry into the path of immortality would lead to disaster. Jiang Ziyue, on the contrary, thought the guy had talent, so she wanted to test his strength herself. As soon as she got close to the guy noticed that the girl was quite tall, about the same height as the guy's main body. He even thought that the sect must be well fed. She abruptly grabbed the guy by the throat. The girl immediately noticed the weirdness in the guy. She quickly assessed the guy's abilities and also noted that the guy's steady pace and deep breathing made him a great candidate for their sect. But she was confused by the fact that the guy's pulse could barely be felt. Caught in such a strange situation, the guy realized that thanks to him, Wang Fa's body had been transformed, so no one should suspect anything. Jiang Wei quickly reacted and began to tell a story. He explained his weak pulse by saying that when his mother was 6 months pregnant, she had to donate her blood to his father. The boy was born prematurely and had to grow up in a military environment. One day, the wind carried him to a rock where he tasted a glowing plant. From then on, he became incredibly strong. Stroking his beard, the elder remarked that he now understood why he thought the young man was so rude, for it turned out that the guy had a hard fate. Jiang Ziyue didn't hold back, telling the guy to attack her to test the guy's strength. He immediately grabbed the girl's wrist, attempting to make a throw. However, Jiang Ziyue instantly blushed and kicked the guy in the back with her foot. She declared, letting Elder Ma test the guy's strength. Falling right in front of the elder, Jiang Wei asked the elder if he would mind checking his strength. Still stroking his beard, the elder noted that if the guy proved himself to be good, then he would take the guy as his handmaiden. Jiang Wei questioned the elder if he could attack with all his might. After all, if he did so, the elder would be hurt. The girls only laughed at the guy's words, thinking that the elder would definitely not be hurt by the youngster's blows. The elder was also a little angry after the guy's words. Realizing that they had agreed to such a thing themselves, Jiang Wei decided to test his current strength by putting all of his power into one strike. He decided to use his zombie body at the third stage of Qi purification, the strength of 10 bean brothers, as well as 2 ferocious bears, 2 potatoes, and 4 pumpkins. His fist glowed with green light as he put all his strength into his punch, deciding that this punch would open the path to immortality. The elder immediately noticed that despite his young age, the guy in front of him was quite capable, so he wished to see how strong the guy was. Wang Yiling immediately stopped the guy, stating that there was no need for him to strike. She also whispered to him that Elder Ma was incredibly strong, and attacking him would be considered an act of defiance. Even if the guy were to burst into their sect, he would face consequences in the future. Jiang Ziyue asked the guy not to worry about anything. After all, the elder is intelligent. She stated that if the guy wants to join the sword pavilion, he should just apologize to Elder Ma. Jiang Wei thanked the girl for taking care of him. He believed that he would be fine since he had already faced Zombie Tide before. Facing danger, he could change his body at any time. Later on, he decided to check his main body. He wondered if Zombie Tide was related to his rebirth. Jiang Wei immediately noticed that it seemed like Zombie Tide was causing a lot of damage in the world. This was the only way he understood why all the sects would create factions. He even wondered who the girl he met about the time of Zombie Tide was. He decided that he should put all his strength into his one strike, because it was his only chance. The elder prepared to take the guy's punch, doubting that the guy would do any damage to him. However, at that moment, the old man's face changed drastically. The girls were also incredibly surprised by what had happened. A jade bottle flew out of the elder's body, and then turning into stone, it cracked and shattered into pieces. A powerful stream of green energy appeared behind the elder at the same moment. The girls were completely shocked by what they saw. Jiang Ziyue immediately noticed that the strength of the guy's strike was comparable to a mid-level Qi refining power. She realized that the guy in front of her was incredibly strong. Wang Yiling was shocked even more as she had time to consider that the guy had destroyed the Taoist elder weapon with his punch. Jiang Wei was surprised that the old man was so unwavering and that the guy's punch, in which all of his strength had been put into, didn't even move the old man. The old man nonchalantly noted that the guy's punch was excellent and that the elixir he drank must have had a great influence on the guy's punch. However, the old man's calmness was contrived. In his heart, he was in a panic, amazed at the guy's terrifying strength. For a moment, it seemed to him that his end had come. The preliminary form of his glass jade bottle was complete. In the future, he still had time to create divine patterns, temper and improve them, but they should be enough to block attacks from the 5th level of Qi refinement, although upon reanalyzing, the old man realized that he would be able to block attacks from the 6th level of Qi refinement. Placing his left hand on the lad's shoulder, the elder announced with all his wisdom that one had to pass 3 tests to join the Jade Spring sect. The first one was the qualification test, the second one was a test of character. No sooner had the old man finished talking about the third test than Jiang Ziyue interrupted him, saying that the third test was to search for the essence of the Tao. She immediately asked the guy if he would like to join the sword pavilion. She stated that the head of the pavilion was her master. Jiang Ziyue announced that she could act on behalf of her master and accept disciples into the sword pavilion. The girl noted that she would be able to guide the guy's improvement, and later on, she might even become the guy's master. Jiang Wei was well aware that if he took part in the trial, the immortals would be able to discover that he had a dead body. However, he also realized that passing the trial was the only way to join the Jade Spring sect. The impatient Wang Yiling told the guy to immediately agree to Jiang Ziyue's proposal. Wang Yiling was insanely jealous that the detached Jiang Ziyue had suddenly offered a mortal brat to become her little brother. However, she was well aware that Jiang Ziyue's talent was incomparable to anyone else. Wang Yiling glared menacingly at the other people who had come to join the sect, thinking that the guy didn't understand the value of Jiang Ziyue's proposal at all. It turns out that when Jiang Ziyue was born, the sky in the east was lit up with the purple light of a large purple star. The purification of the inner purple Qi descended upon Jiang Ziyue. In order to create a solid foundation, the sect elders forced Jiang Ziyue to cultivate the qi for 10 years, fearing that otherwise she would break through to the golden core and meet the heavenly lord. Wang Yiling clutched her hands on her head. She was bursting with anger and envy. As far as she knew, in Diantian, Jiang Ziyue had endured the desecration of divine lands and harassment from vile men. After all the horrors she had endured, Jiang Ziyue decided to come to their barren land to deal with zombie tide. One of the people who came to the trial wondered why Jiang Ziyue had to cultivate for 10 years. After all, qi refining is the lowest initial stage. Wang Yiling yelled at the guys, informing them that they wouldn't understand it. She recalled that a common saying among mortals was, "For those who refine qi, the gods will never die." She explained to the others that the natural flow of qi had no properties. And to transform qi, one must use spiritual roots. The spiritual roots of the 5 elements could transform the energy of the 5 elements, and special spiritual roots could transform special spiritual energy. The inner violet qi Jiang Ziyue existed back in the distant past and will exist on earth and heaven forever. In addition, a powerful golden magician had perfected weapons and appeared in front of Jiang Ziyue. The powerful Zixi sword, wielded by Jiang Ziyue, could directly reflect blows and kill powerful enemies. She also stated that with the help of the inner purple qi, a strong foundation could be created. However, the girl didn't particularly like Wang Yiling's story and promised to tell the guy more about cultivation later. Getting as close to him as possible, she inquired what the guy thought of her suggestion. Jiang Wei immediately inquired that if he followed Jiang Ziyue, he would be able to enter the sword pavilion. The elder let Jiang Ziyue finish his speech. He then reminded her that she had completely forgotten about his presence. He also reminded her that he too had met the young man in front of him by pure chance. Jiang Ziyue was unwilling to back down, saying that their meeting with the guy was predestined by fate, so she was willing to share a fire qi absorption technique that would suit the guy's fire spirit root. The elder was simply furious that Jiang Ziyue was so easily giving away a technique that even an elder would want to learn. The old man was dumbfounded that the sword pavilion was so desperate to fight for extra benefits in the Jade Source sect. Jiang Ziyue continued her speech, revealing that the fire qi spiritual absorption beast transforms the spiritual energy of magma into a cyclone and absorbs it. Its length can reach 100 meters, and its strength is comparable to that of a golden rod. The technique helps purify qi and improves stamina. The cultivation speed of the technique is 5 times faster. When an immortal uses this technique, he is under the protection of the fire spirit and will be able to face the process of creating the foundations and the golden arrow. Jiang Wei was surprised and thankful that Jiang Ziyue was so generous to share a high-level technique with him. Wang Yiling could not hide her tears. She didn't understand why the technique didn't go to her but to some passerby. Envy had clouded her mind so much that it had weakened the foundation of the Tao, causing her to face unpleasant consequences. The elder was not going to give up so easily either. He asked the guy to think carefully because, judging from the guy's clothes, his family had a hard time in this life. The elder promised that if the guy joined his pavilion, he would be able to live a prosperous life and use magic weapons, as well as gain connections and cultivation conditions. The guy was curious to know which pavilion the elder was from. Wang Yiling came to her senses and once again shouted at the guy. She was displeased with the guy's action because anyone would have long ago scattered in front of Jiang Ziyue in gratitude. She pointed out that geniuses from all over the world dream of such an opportunity, but the guy was suddenly haggling. Wang Yiling turned the guy's head towards Jiang Ziyue and told him to immediately agree to Jiang Ziyue's offer. At this moment, the elder announced that he was from the weapon refining pavilion. After pondering his situation for a bit, Jiang Wei announced his decision. He was hoping for Elder Ma's guidance. Wang Yiling was a little displeased that the guy hesitated for so long. After all, he should have chosen Jiang Ziyue right away. She noted that his choice would make him happy for the rest of his life. Suddenly she realized that Jiang Wei had chosen Elder Ma, and flew aside as if from a blow. At this moment, even the old man was puzzled by the guy's choice. He clearly didn't expect the guy to choose him. Jiang Ziyue's pride was shattered. She couldn't understand why the guy chose the elder. She wanted to know the answer to her question. Jiang Wei asked if Jiang Ziyue would take away the technique she had previously given him if he told her the truth. The girl immediately calmed the guy down, saying that she was not that mean, so the guy could give a reason for refusing. Pointing at Jiang Ziyue with the index finger of his left hand, Jiang Wei confessed that Jiang Ziyue would definitely never become his follower. I wonder what Elder Ma thinks about this matter. Jiang Ziyue realized that the guy was implying that she wouldn't be able to teach him. She thought this kind of thought from the guy was just ridiculous. Jiang Wei asked the girl not to get angry, and then asked the girl to show the people present the introductory chapter of the technique the girl had given him. She thought that he shouldn't ask her permission. After all, she had given him a gift, and he had the right to dispose of his gift as he wished. Jiang Wei then called everyone closer to the scroll so that they could all read the introductory chapter on learning the secret technique together. All the people present came closer and began to read the opening chapter of the secret technique. The guy then sat everyone down on the ground, and they began to practice the material they had just learned. After that, Jiang Wei approached the girl and asked that she take a look at the introductory chapter of the cultivation of this technique. Jiang Ziyue's pride was affected, but nevertheless expressing her dissatisfaction, the girl decided to show the guy and the others the basics of the technique. To purify qi, one must first learn how to control qi. The scheme was as follows. Qi flow starts from the C dantian and passes through 36 major acupuncture points and 72 minor acupuncture points all over the body. The connection with the image of the flaming clam belongs to the initial level. 3 days will be quite enough for this. Jiang Wei was surprised that Jiang Ziyue had mastered the beginner level in just 3 days. He thought she was truly brilliant. The guy then asked what they thought about it. Wang Yiling admitted that she needed a whole month to master the beginner level. Jiang Wei even joked lightly that she needed 30 days. The elder pointed out that talents are born from generation to generation. He has been cultivating since the foundation, so he would need 7 days to use the technique. Even for an elder, the process took 7 days. The guy was surprised that the process was so long. Jiang Ziyue explained that the body and heart are united, but the mind and heart are not. The mind transforms into spirit and wanders through the body, so the inner heaven and earth appear. After 3 days of repetition, the shadow of the flame clam will thicken, and this will help protect the person's body, and then the person will achieve a little success. Jiang Wei didn't quite understand what the girl said. Wang Yiling also thought that Jiang Ziyue's explanation was too vague. The elder was no exception and noticed that there were many difficulties in the girl's explanation. However, Jiang Ziyue simply became furious when she realized that even after her excellent explanations, they couldn't understand anything. Finally, exhaling heavily, Jiang Wei pointed out that Jiang Ziyue was incredibly talented and brilliant, so she couldn't understand the difficulties of ordinary people in cultivation. In this way, the guy explained to the girl why Elder Ma would suit him better as a teacher than her. After all, Elder Ma was more like himself. Elder Ma confirmed the guy's words. In fact, the devious Jiang Wei believed that Jiang Ziyue attracted all the attention of the world, so if he got close to her, he would immediately receive unnecessary attention. The weapon purification pavilion, according to his plan, was closer to the potions pavilion, which was the one he wanted to go to the most. After all, only after visiting the potions pavilion would his mission be complete. He finally had a 7th flower in his arsenal, the devouring flower. Devouring flower is capable of devouring an opponent once a day. The speed of devouring depends on the level. The next stage of evolution was Vajra devouring flower, which doubled the absorption speed. The next stage of evolution was wild devouring flower, which could continue attacking after absorbing an opponent. Further evolution was unavailable and unknown at this point. However, it had a problem that it had not yet been able to solve. During his journey and being in the epicenter of zombie tide, a guy saw a flying boat in the sky. Then some kind of plant appeared in the ground. Immediately the plant was like a cannonball rushing towards the flying boat in the sky. As a result, a tremendous explosion occurred. Jiang Wei and the rest of the zombies were incredibly shocked when they saw something like this. Under the perplexed looks of the other zombies, the guy rushed to dig the ground. After digging a small hole, he immediately decided to eat 10 spiritual sunflower and plant 10 nuts. It was as if the guy was in a bunker, as the 10 nuts planted practically covered his entire body. As it turned out, he acted correctly as he realized the consequences of that powerful flying boat explosion. Fiery shards like a rain of fire began to fall to the ground. The zombies tried to run away from the fire in fear, but they were covered by the rain of fire one after another. Near the guy, there was an explosion of gigantic proportions, which miraculously did not hit his hiding place and did not destroy it. Being in his hole and hugging a giant nut, the guy was incredibly scared. He even wondered if there was a nuclear bomb in this world. The attacked flying boat began to disintegrate and a firebird began to fall down. The guy slowly approached the bird that had fallen to the ground. A brilliant plan immediately formed in his mind. He was going to plant Devouring Flower. Devouring Flower appeared and tried to eat the giant bird. A few moments later, the system reported that the Devouring Flower had devoured the strange beast, the firebird. The guy was incredibly happy after receiving such an unexpected benefit. However, he wasn't in a hurry to approach it himself and decided to send a zombie to check things out first, as caution wouldn't hurt. When the zombie ran up to the hole formed by something hitting the ground, he found there the very girl the guy had seen earlier. The guy immediately recognized the girl. She was the same girl who appeared in the sky during zombie tide. He was surprised as he thought the girl was a high-level zombie king or the source of zombie tide. Jiang Wei didn't expect that the girl could launch attacks similar to the nuclear bomb. He walked closer to the girl and inquired if she was alive. However, at this moment, his face was covered in cold sweat, as he was well aware that the world of cultivators was too terrifying. If the girl wakes up, he definitely won't survive, because he can't fool the girl just by pretending to be a zombie. Looking at the unconscious girl lying there, he wondered if it would be a good idea if he planted another devouring flower. He was already about to plant a devouring flower since his wealth was in danger. However, at this moment, the girl suddenly opened her eyes. The frightened guy decided that his end had definitely come now. He grabbed his head with both hands, and the girl suddenly held out her palm towards him. The guy was even more frightened, as he thought that now he would definitely be destroyed. But suddenly a system window appeared, and the system informed him that a new species of flower had been discovered. The system asked if the guy wanted to take the new species of flower for himself. From the fear he experienced, the guy was incredibly angry at the system for asking stupid questions, because obviously he wanted a new kind of flower. At the same instant, the girl's hand glowed, and a fiery projectile reappeared from it. From such a powerful strike, the area behind the guy was as if a powerful blow had just been struck there. Jiang Wei wasn't hurt at all, which surprised him greatly. Lowering his gaze to the ground, he noticed that the girl was no longer there. Suddenly, the system informed the guy that he had obtained a new plot. The girl was displayed in his system. She stated that the ability the guy used belonged to her master. Jiang Wei looked at the girl with an incomprehensible look. With tears in her eyes, the girl said that her master had actually already died. Only now did the guy begin to understand what the girl was trying to convey to him. The synthetic version of the system was apparently given to him after the death of the past owner. So such a strong system could work even after the death of the owner. Jiang Wei tried to understand what all this could mean and whether there was some kind of universal conspiracy in this case. The girl cried and hugged her knees, wondering why the master didn't take her with him. According to the system, the girl's name was Yilan. She was a 7-star jade cannon, an advanced model of the small corn cannon. It could be charged to fire a cannon of destruction. At this moment, Jiang Wei realized what a fool he had been. He had been too careless, thinking that with a system and the right choice of plants, he would be invincible. An endless influx of dead people could be grown in the previous owner's locality. The 7-star jade cannon fired a near-nuclear bomb but was shot down by a flying ship, and the previous owner of the system died on the spot. After analyzing the situation, the guy made the most important conclusion: Cultivator World was too dangerous. In his opinion, the current system needed to be hidden, changed, and strengthened as soon as possible. Things weren't easy in the present tense either. Jiang Ziyue informed the others that something was coming. A moment later, they all saw a giant boat flying through the sky. Elder Mo shared the information with the others that the boat in front of them was a spiritual boat sent by the sect to learn the basics of zombie tide. The current sect leader and a few elders had brought the spirit beast and the top-grade boat with them, but the boat was still damaged. Suddenly, from the spirit boat, someone spoke to Jiang Ziyue. They confessed that they had learned the truth about Zombie Tide. After fiercely fighting for 5,000 rounds against a powerful enemy, they were able to win. Now Jiang Ziyue would have to temporarily fulfill the role of the sect leader. Jiang Ziyue understood the order given to her and took command of the sect. She only gave the guy a furtive glance and then disappeared, leaving behind only a purple flash. Jiang Wei was extremely dissatisfied with the situation. He had spent so much time becoming an inner sect disciple, and Jiang Ziyue was the acting sect leader. He remembered that the 7-star jade cannon had struck the spirit boat, so now he didn't understand how the spirit boat could still fly. Elder Ma grabbed the guy's hand and told him to walk with him to the mountain gate. He assured that the guy was lucky to have the opportunity to enter the weapon cleansing pavilion. The elder summoned his giant crane to go to the weapon purification pavilion. After a while of flying on the back of the giant crane, Jiang Wei marveled at what the land of immortals was really like, and that it was as it was described in books. Looking at his system and the plants in it, he was already anticipating what he could plant. He wanted to plant spiritual sunflower for starters, and then more synthetic plants. He even began to think about planting 100 sunflowers. Thanks to the system, he was no weaker than the others, but he needed to be careful with the spirit boat, and at the same time unravel the secret of immortality. He needed to find out the truth about Zombie Tide, find out the name of the previous owner of the system, and obtain the legacy of the previous owner of the system. After all, he now knew about the 7-star jade cannon whose strikes were comparable to a nuclear bomb. However, Yilan did not accept the guy. She stated that the master had a hope of resurrection and the guy was just a temporary option. When her master finds out that the guy is using his land, he will cut the guy into pieces. Meanwhile, one of the disciples arrived at the Supreme Elder's house and gave him the information that the Zombie Tide had started again in the hundreds of thousands of mountains. The disciples were going to take the chance of discovering the legacy of the Yangtze River Heavenly Lord. The Supreme Elder noted that the guy had been laying the groundwork for 3 years, but the Holy Sun had never appeared, so he thought that the guy was a genius of the Shengguan sect. He also said that geniuses from other sects in the eastern wasteland had already traveled. He granted the fellow a spirit beast, the 9-headed python, to accompany the fellow. The Supreme Elder told the fellow to go and bring as much of the Heavenly Lord's legacy as possible. Chen Yaojie promised that he would fulfill the order and not let the Supreme Elder down. At the same time, the 9-headed python rushed out of the building. It seems Chen Yaojie is the future zombie body for Jiang Wei. Jiang Wei just wanted a genius for his zombie collection. A little bored and sitting on the ground, Jiang Wei offered the girl a deal where she would help him. He believed that the girl would still protect herself so she could protect him at the same time. However, Yilan kept her equanimity without giving in to the guy's entreaties. In the end, he exhaled languidly because it had been 3 days and nothing had changed in their relationship. If she wanted to help him, she would be his biggest bargaining chip. However, contrary to his words, the girl locked herself in a leafy cocoon to not talk to him anymore. Jiang Wei wasn't confused and wasn't too depressed, shifting his attention to the fact that he had at least managed to open a second plot. But for now, he decided to just cultivate spiritual sunflower. Next to the leafy cocoon the girl was sitting in, a spiritual sunflower suddenly appeared. But just a moment later, the girl plucked the spiritual sunflower from the ground, and then took the spiritual sunflower into her leaf cocoon. The guy was surprised by the fact that the girl seemed to have eaten the spiritual sunflower. Since the girl had already decided to do something, he decided to do an experiment and planted another plant. However, a moment later, the girl kicked the planted plant with her foot. The devouring flower was kicked out of the system and into the real world. Jiang Wei managed to dodge it in time as it flew past him and exploded, hitting the other zombies. At this moment, a creepy smirk appeared on the guy's face. He figured that since Yilan was accepting feed from him, he could grow it to maturity. The girl was throwing plants she didn't like out of the system, so if he used the situation correctly, he would be able to grow a serious assassin. The guy was recalling the event when he heard someone knocking on the door of the room. He was told to leave the room immediately. Someone behind the door argued that since Wang was able to sneak in through the back door, he must have the ability to open the door. He even reminded the guy if he insulted the big sister, acting as an elder, he wouldn't get any more good fruit juice. The guy scratched his hand behind his head, trying to realize how he got himself into such an uncomfortable situation. 3 days ago, Elder Ma had brought him to this place. The old man said that the guy should first learn the basic weapon refining technique on his own, and the old man himself admitted that he had no time to waste on the fellow right now. However, Jiang Wei clasped his hands around the elder, stating that the elder was acting irresponsibly, and that he would then have to find another elder. Elder Ma became furious, explaining that right now all the elders had gone to a meeting for an urgent matter. The elder was tired of listening, so he gave him his badge. As he left, he informed the guy that with his badge, the guy would be able to pass through to the book pavilion, spiritual beast garden, spiritual medicine garden, and other places. Jiang Wei instantly changed his mind and asked the elder not to worry about him, as he had been able to cook since childhood and would be able to feed himself. But the elder's job was a bit more important. Eventually, it came to a point where rumors began to spread. One man wondered if they had heard that Elder Ma of the Weapon Purification Pavilion had accepted the poor guy as an inner disciple. The other man was surprised. He wondered who helped such a guy advance to inner disciple. A third man complained that they all had to be errand guys, and his older brother still carried water and had not been promoted yet. The fourth talked about how the guy was directly provoking the current sect leader, the most talented and wonderful big sister. Jiang Wei had certainly expected such a situation, but now he realized even better that everywhere had its disadvantages. As soon as he decided to go outside, he noticed that there were many disciples crowded around his door. One of the disciples smiled wickedly, noting that the guy had finally opened the door, or he had already thought the guy had died in there. Another disciple asked the guy how the guy even dared to ignore his big brothers and join the sect. Jiang Wei was not a whipping guy, so he immediately pointed out that he absolutely did not expect to see worthless flies like them in the sect. One of the disciples drew his sword, angrily stating that since the guy had insulted him, he had every right to kill the guy. However, the oldest disciple stepped forward and, like a peacemaker, stopped the others. He kindly explained to the guy that if the guy wanted to live in the sect, he should just apologize. However, Jiang Wei calmly brushed them off. He pointed out that he knew what the others were trying to accomplish. Therefore, he asked the others to just say so, and if they didn't want to talk, they could get out and not bother him. The men were surprised. However, the third man reacted with a smile and directly asked why the guy was asking to die like that, instead of kneeling down and begging for mercy. Jiang Wei showed the others the secret technique that was in his hands. He inquired if the others had come for the technique that he had. He even once again pointed out that senior sister Jiang had given him the technique. The others suddenly glared and immediately confessed that they had come for the secret technique. After all, a poor guy like him was not worthy of owning such a technique. Drooling and sticking their tongues out of their mouths while looking at the secret technique, they even promised that if the guy gave them the secret technique, they would protect him. They immediately got into a dog-like posture that the guy was even surprised that they were no different from wild dogs. However, they immediately jumped up and were indignant. Now they thought that the guy definitely wanted to die and that not even the dogs could save him. At this moment, another guy appeared and stood up for Jiang Wei. He politely asked the others to calm down. The guy who appeared revealed that his name was Qi Yuzhou and that he was from the Potions Pavilion. The blonde guy politely asked that the others not mess up the guy's life. The guys tried to remember who Qi Yuzhou was in general. One of them remembered that Qi Yuzhou was the newcomer from the Potions Pavilion. The oldest of them had heard that the talent for alchemy was very valuable, as one could reach the 9th level of Qi refinement with it. Qi Yuzhou calmly explained to them, the acting sect head, and an elder from the Weapon Purification Pavilion had made the decisions that Wang Fa would join the sect. Therefore, he reminded the others that they should not behave so irresponsibly. He even proposed an initiative that if disagreements started to arise among the students, they could resolve all disagreements in a monthly competition. The three most rowdy ones thought about the suggestion that Qi Yuzhou had voiced. Eventually, they grudgingly followed his advice. However, as they left, they still threw barbed words towards the guy. They thought that a useless person with an average level of spiritual root like Wang Fa, who just happened to be lucky enough to enter the sect, was unlikely to be able to win the competition. After they left, Qi Yuzhou to the guy, once again saying hello to him and giving his name. He informed the guy that he was Elder Wen's disciple from the Potions Pavilion. Zhang Wei pointed out that Qi Yuzhou had helped him, which meant that the others could now pester him. However, Qi Yuzhou was not so simple. His aura changed when he confessed that they were only petty brats, and only those behind them should be feared. Qi Yuzhou even revealed that behind such petty bipeds was the Prince of Tianlang. However, Zhang Wei had never heard of such a thing. A prince of the Tianlang kingdom with the blood of a heavenly wolf flowing in him. A true high-level disciple and a genius who reached the 9th level of Qi refinement at the age of 16. Qi Yuzhou confessed that his elder was badly injured during the zombie tide research, so the elder needed a cure. Qi Yuzhou promised that if the guy helped him, he would help him solve his prince problem in return. However, Zhang Wei only spread his hands apart, noting that he didn't have any elixir, so there was no way he could help Qi Yuzhou. Qi Yuzhou refused to give up. He grabbed the guy's hand, and then informed him that the blood of the heavenly wolf is incredibly pure, and also that the prince considers Jiang Ziyue as his concubine. The girl gave the guy her technique, which means the prince will want to return the technique, so the guy is in danger. Zhang Wei became curious about how cultivators reproduce. He wanted a detailed explanation about how a human was born with the blood of a celestial wolf. He was about to pursue this topic further, but Qi Yuzhou's face was covered in cold sweat. Qi Yuzhou asked the guy to watch what he was saying and doing. After all, the Heavenly Wolf bloodline actually practiced Heavenly Wolf transformation at a very high level, and their descendants were born with magical abilities. If someone heard what the guy said, they might think that the guy called Prince Tianlang a bastard. Zhang Wei rightly pointed out that Qi Yuzhou himself had just said that. Qi Yuzhou covered the guy's mouth with his hand, loudly saying that he had just misspoke. Qi Yuzhou held out a piece of black iron to him, with a request that the guy promise not to say anything to anyone. The system immediately reported that it had detected a synthesizable material and asked if the guy wanted to take it. With great reluctance in his heart, at least he showed it so, he still took the piece of black iron. Qi Yuzhou immediately exhaled a sigh of relief. Zhang Wei plunged into his thoughts. He thought on what he could combine the piece of black iron with, coming to the conclusion that he could try to combine the piece of black iron with nuts. The combination resulted in the mysterious black iron nut, a nut made of black iron. This kind of nut was hard and had the protective power to withstand the damage of a level 9 Qi refinement. The guy was shocked that a tiny piece of ore had turned into a huge block. He was overjoyed at his good fortune as the volume had increased by 100 times. After realizing the full potential of this scheme, Zhang Wei immediately ran up to Qi Yuzhou. He inquired if Qi Yuzhou had any more black iron. However, Qi Yuzhou was not very happy about this matter. He explained that black iron was incredibly valuable as it could increase the sharpness of a sword by several times. Even such a small piece of black iron that he gave him is worth 10 spiritual stones, which is equal to the monthly salary of an inner sect disciple. Hearing his words, Zhang Wei was in anticipation, although he did not show it, and said that he was just curious to know about it. However, he himself was already encouraged that the immortal cultivation world was full of good things. He was already eager to try more recipes. Where will this path lead him, and what will the prince try to do to him? Zhang Wei confessed that he had actually already absorbed the elixir. He was going to go to the mountains to search for peat and glowing elixir. The guy reluctantly revealed that he realized that he was asking for too much. Zhang Wei was glad that the guy realized this. Qi Yuzhou apologized to the guy and then revealed that Elder Wen treated him as his own son, so it was painful for him to see the elder in such a state. Zhang Wei inquired if the guy could apologize first. A joyful Qi Yuzhou apologized to him for possibly offending him in some way. He thought that as a disciple of the Weapon Purification Pavilion, the guy could use a black iron. In the end, he held out the bottle in Zhang Wei's hands. The guy reported that it contained the Fire Qi pill from the Potions Pavilion. The pill is useful for cultivators with the Fire Spirit root, and prolonged use can transform ordinary Qi into fiery Qi. Shaking out the contents of the bottle onto his hand, Zhang Wei noticed that there were only 5 pills. so he didn't understand how he could take such a small amount of pills for a long time. The blond man scratched his head with his finger, noting that these pills were very difficult to make and that one such pill was worth 5 spirit stones. Hiding the bottle to his clothes, Jiang Wei inquired what the blond man wanted. Qi Yuzhou said with a smile that since the guy drank the elixir, he would be happy if the guy brought him some materials to refine the healing potions. At this moment, Jiang Wei, as if out of nowhere, pulled out a spiritual sunflower and held it out to the guy. The guy was extremely shocked when he saw the spiritual sunflower in front of him. Jiang Wei said that even without his words, he knew how incredibly kind he was. If you don't praise yourself, then no one else will either. He also said that he had told the others that he had eaten the entire spiritual sunflower, but he had actually only taken one bite. In truth, he just took a bite of the spiritual sunflower and then put it back in his bag. Qi Yuzhou was already drooling and looked at the spiritual sunflower as if it was a deity. He could clearly see that the spiritual sunflower in front of him was a spiritual plant. It takes hundreds of years to obtain such a spiritual plant. After all, the spiritual plant in front of him possessed an unprecedented rich spiritual power. Suddenly, Jiang Wei realized that the turned-out spiritual sunflower that he had given to the guy was incredibly valuable. This made him realize that his knowledge of this world was too little. Qi Yuzhou, holding the flower like a baby in his arms, announced that such a plant would fetch at least 10,000 spiritual stones at an auction. Although the plant was damaged and the spiritual energy was lost, it was still very valuable. After realizing the situation going on, Jiang Wei said that he had made such a gift to Qi Yuzhou since he had almost no friends in this place, and Qi Yuzhou was willing to help him and give him useful things. Qi Yuzhou was so happy that even tears were pouring out of his eyes. He promised that he would definitely repay the guy for such a gift. After that, he ran, asking the guy to wait for him at this place as he was going to return soon. Jiang Wei hoped that the guy wasn't deceiving him and didn't just take off and run away. Thinking about the problem, he asked the system if he could synthesize fire qi pills. The system responded to his request, stating that a synthesizable material had been discovered. And then the system asked if the guy wanted to use this material. Jiang Wei was happy that his plan had worked. After that, he sent a fire qi pill at Bean Brother. Bean Brother changed dramatically. His body was enveloped by a fiery energy, and the other Bean Brothers were even afraid of him. The system reported that as a result of the synthesis, an evil Bean Brother had appeared. The evil Bean Brother produces one fire qi pill every day. Each of his attacks surpassed the attack power of a cultivator of the first level of the fire qi refining stage. Guy was surprised that evil Bean Brother was capable of such things. Other than that, he was glad that he would now have an unlimited supply of fire qi pill. Realizing that the strategy was working, he fed the remaining 4 fire qi pills to the other Bean Brothers. As a result, each of the evolved plants into an evil Bean Brother spit out 1 fire qi pill to him, so he recouped his investment. He noticed that not only his combat power increased, but also his recovery speed, and in the future, he could have an infinite number of such pills. After a while, a joyful Qi Yuzhou returned. In his hand was a scroll. He confessed that he had gone to the library and exchanged all his merits for an Earth-ranked Fire Emperor body technique. The guy had brought this technique for Jiang Wei as he really wanted to thank him for his kindness. Jiang Wei was in anticipation as the name of the technique was quite impressive. In this measure, the techniques were divided into 4 ranks: heavenly, earthly, mystic, and yellow. The fire qi absorption technique that Jiang Ziyue had given him was incredibly valuable, but its rank was very low. Qi Yuzhou explained that the refined Fire Emperor body technique gave one a chance to cultivate holy fire, which could be used to summon heavenly and earthly phenomena. He noted that these techniques can be practiced together, so he happily remarked that the guy had a bright future ahead of him. He then handed the guy an invitation to the auction, informing him that this auction is held by many sects in the Xiwan Mountains. Qi Yuzhou admitted that he had heard that the auction would be selling natural spiritual fire, so he advised the guy to look into this auction. Taking the invitation, the guy remarked how Qi Yuzhou was actually such a good person. Jiang Wei leaned towards him, then put his hand on his shoulder and asked if he could ask him for a favor. Qi Yuzhou's face glowed as he declared that he would do anything to help the guy. After that, Jiang Wei held out a scroll in his hands to him. He requested that the blonde man pass this scroll to the 3 servants of Prince Tianlang, so that they could pass this fire qi absorption technique to Prince Tianlang, and he also wanted Qi Yuzhou to spread the rumor that such an event had happened. Plus, he wanted Qi Yuzhou to casually let the prince's henchmen know that he would return to the old place to collect the remaining sacred medicine. Qi Yuzhou was surprised that the spiritual plant he gave him was not in a single copy. Zhang Wei confirmed his hunch. He also said that if Qi Yuzhou completed his task, he would definitely reward him generously. Qi Yuzhou responded to his request understandingly, noting that the guy was too polite, but he would definitely help him and justify his trust. However, Qi Yuzhou was not as simple-minded as he might seem at first glance. He realized Wang Fa was extremely lucky and that he had an extraordinary destiny. In addition, he noticed that even though the guy was young, he was shrewd and ruthless. Therefore, he thought that the guy would definitely achieve great success in the future. In the end, he decided that the guy was worthy of being his friend. After a while, Qi Yuzhou and the others left, so the guy tiredly stretched. He thought that the people in the immortality cultivation world were incredibly obsessive. Although he thought that the fire qi absorption technique was good in a zombie body, but he could barely feel the fire attribute and its spiritual energy in the air. That was why he decided to give the technique to another person for now. In the end, he decided to use 5 more fire qi pills to obtain 5 more evil bean brothers and obtain 5 more pills every day, and then transform 2 more bean brothers. After that, he would get 12 evil bean brother and 3 fire qi pills. And from tomorrow, the guy would start receiving 12 fire qi pills every day. However, he would be able to use them for cultivation a little later. Without thinking long, he opened the Fire Emperor Body Technique scroll that Qi Yuzhou had given him earlier, and then began to study the information from the scroll. Exercising in an area with an active fire element was good for training. They should be used to temper one's body, turning one's skin, flesh, bones, and blood into a fire elemental body. There is also the possibility of eventually turning the spiritual root into a sacred fire spirit body. After reading the information from the scroll, he angrily threw the scroll on the ground. He realized that by translating the information from the scroll into a simple language, he would be able to unite with fire. He was angered by this information, as even boiling water was too hot for him, and here he was being offered to lie in the fire. He even thought that he was being mocked. However, after a second, he changed his mind and bent back to the scroll to pick it up. Zhang Wei remembered that he could feel almost no pain at the moment, so he might as well try practicing this technique. He didn't know where he could practice the technique yet, but he still confidently went outside to find a suitable place. After a while, at the gate of the weapon purification pavilion, a guard was sleeping peacefully at his post. Suddenly, Wang Fa, a new disciple of the pavilion, appeared in front of him, so the guard instantly woke up. Wang Fa showed him the badge that the elder had previously given him, which greatly surprised the guard. As a result, the guard let him through the gate. Zhang Wei remembered that the weapon purification pavilion used earth fire as its main energy resource. Unlike spiritual and mystic fire, the temperature of earth fire was the highest. Each room had an underground blast-proof forge furnace, which was perfect for cultivation. After looking around, the guy opened the door of one of the buildings. Inside, he found a forge with flames burning at full blast. Even standing at the door, he could feel the incredible heat and could sense the fire element. Before starting, the guy decided to eat a fire qi pill. He then used the fire qi absorption technique. The guy did this to absorb the fire element, and only then did he decide to use the Fire Emperor Body Technique to temper his body. In the blink of an eye, the mask from his face flew off from practicing such a technique. His body was visibly burned, and he felt an incredible scalding heat. But nevertheless, he wasn't going to rest on his laurels and wanted to continue practicing. His upper garments were sizzled in an instant. He was screaming in horrible pain as he was unable to curb the technique. He needed to let the spiritual energy circulate through his body and then absorb it. The spiritual energy in his body circulated after eating the spiritual sunflower. Only the smallest portion was transformed into fire energy, and the rest was simply burned away. The flames coming from this technique were also burning his body, so if things continued like this, he would be burned to death. Will the guy be able to find a solution to get out of such a dangerous situation? Jiang Wei couldn't believe that his journey in this world would end so quickly. The guy realized that he had lived a mediocre 20-year life on Earth, studying at a mediocre university with no hope of a bright future. He had great ambitions, but he clearly realized that he probably would never have been able to find a job. He wasn't tall, he wasn't rich, he wasn't handsome, and he wasn't even from a wealthy family. The guy just lived a boring and monotonous life, and he didn't even have a hint of good opportunities in his life. His body was burning with flames, but he jumped up and announced that he didn't want to live like that anymore. He didn't want to be so weak and worthless, and he was willing to not give in to hardship anymore. Jiang Wei declared that a great blessing had come upon him, a chance to start over. Therefore, he was going to seize the opportunity, become famous, and find a way to return to Earth after he achieved success in cultivation. He wanted to succeed, he wanted to become the best among immortal cultivators, to prove to himself and the world that he was not useless. Jiang Wei was going to point out to everyone in this world that he was not someone who could be controlled. After all, if God gave him another chance, he was going to enter the heavenly palace and achieve enlightenment. He was eager to achieve success and be the first to ascend to heaven. Jiang Wei then ordered the system to reveal an empty mountainous area to him. Jiang Wei told the system to plant a single row of spiritual sunflower. The guy crouched down next to the spiritual sunflowers that had just been planted. The foliage cocoon Yilan was sitting in stirred. Yilan emerged from the leaf cocoon. She began to reprimand the guy, believing that he was taking back what he had given her. The girl thought that compared to her master, the guy was a complete non-entity. However, after grabbing a few spiritual sunflowers and started eating them, the guy declared that he had no time for her right now. He completely swallowed all of the spiritual sunflowers, and the flames around his body only intensified. The guy's face contorted in pain. He was well aware that spiritual sunflowers could heal even zombies. But only now did he realize that absorbing spiritual energy made the fire more intense, so his original plan wasn't working. Without thinking long, he took the black iron nut in his hand. Then he began to eat the black iron nut as fast as possible. Exhaling steam from his mouth and nose, the guy couldn't hide the smile on his face. He was happy that the hastily thought-out plan had worked. The black iron essence had penetrated his body, so he noted that the flames could burn him as much as he wanted. Since he wouldn't die now, he decided to try again. Jiang Wei decided to use the black iron and synthesize other nuts. After obtaining more nuts, the guy started stuffing them into his mouth. After finishing the nuts, he noticed that the flames were blazing, and the black iron spirit was fusing with his body, so his body became stronger. This process made him think that it was as if he was hardening his flesh. However, his new plan might not work. After all, if he drank too much black iron essence, he would turn into an Iron Man, and he hadn't even cultivated fire techniques yet. Jiang Wei wondered if there was no way he could get a normal human body from a zombie body. He was extremely curious if there was a way out of his plight. Suddenly, his attention was drawn to a plant that he noticed in his field. Jiang Wei remembered that he had previously absorbed one fire spirit bird beast at the foundation formation stage. However, he was surprised that after digesting the bird, there was only one egg left of the bird on his field. The guy immediately grabbed the scroll and started reading. From the scroll, he found out that in addition to hardening the emperor's body with flames, there was another secret method. It was possible to absorb the talents of fire element beasts and thus speed up the transformation of the body. The guy was glad that he had found a secret method that he could use. Grasping the egg with his hand, he began to examine it. Guy thought that the strange beast in front of him looked unusual. However, he felt that this egg should meet the necessary requirements for his technique and for a young and inexperienced cultivator like him. So he didn't put this venture on hold and decided to activate the technique right away. The guy's entire body was engulfed in destructive flames. And then a fire phoenix appeared from the egg it had activated. Jiang Wei grabbed the fire phoenix by its tail and then began to push the fire phoenix into his mouth, starting to devour the fire phoenix. His entire body was enveloped in destructive flames, which began to rise higher and higher in the forge. Soon it had been 3 days since the guy had entered the forge. He bent down to pick up his mask from the floor, which for some reason did not burn in the destructive flames. Putting the mask back on his face, the guy was ecstatic that his plan had succeeded. He was now an elite zombie. Attributes: High Fire Spirit Root. Body 1. Golden Crow's blood is 3%. Body 2. Fire Emperor Yang, 15%. Body 3. Black Iron Purified Body, 25%. Cultivation: 7th Stage Qi Refining. He was ecstatic, for his spiritual root had fully developed to the highest level, and his body had completely absorbed the blood of the fire beast. In addition, Emperor Yang's skills had also made great progress. Waving his hands and pounding his fist on his chest, the guy admitted that he had absolutely never expected his body to absorb the black iron essence. Now, although his body was not completely invulnerable, it was able to withstand bullets. He finally walked out of the weapon purification pavilion gate. While he was kneading his body, Qi Yuzhou ran up to him. He grabbed Jiang Wei's hand, but Jiang Wei didn't understand where they were going. The blonde guy said that he needed to run to Potion's pavilion immediately. The guy pointed out that outsiders were not allowed to enter Potion's pavilion, so it was the only place where he could hide from the others. Qi Yuzhou explained that it was all his fault. The guy asked him to tell him that he would go to gather herbs in 3 days, but Prince Tianlang personally found out about it. Therefore, Prince Tianlang demanded that Wang Fa become the guide. At this moment, Prince Tianlang and his minions gathered at the gate of their mountain abode. However, the fellow asked Qi Yuzhou to stop. Qi Yuzhou was astonished after realizing that he couldn't even move the guy. He immediately realized that as a cultivator, the guy had noticeably grown as a cultivator. Jiang Wei calmed him down, noting that Qi Yuzhou shouldn't take such a risk, and that he himself would meet the arriving guests. However, Qi Yuzhou continued his attempts to save the guy. He declared that Wang Fa was no equal to Prince Tianlang. Prince Tianlang's cultivation had already reached the peak of the 9th level of Qi refining, and he could make a breakthrough to the foundation establishment stage at any time. Guy thought the prince was an incredibly brilliant cultivator. He believed that Prince Tianlang was a monster of the same level as the acting sect leader Jiang Ziyue. Jiang Wei asked him to stop and no longer discourage him. He stated that he had recently stepped onto the path of immortals, but his pursuit of Dao was no weaker than Qi Yuzhou's. The guy believed that if one was willing to fight, one should fight everything, and if one retreated from the beginning, how could one retain the dignity to continue cultivating? Qi Yuzhou was surprised when he heard his words. Jiang Wei continued, noting that if today they dared to humiliate him for being weak, tomorrow they would dare to demand that he crawl on his knees. The guy wasn't some upstart or just prideful with no reason to think he wouldn't win and rely on luck alone. He recognized that his main body was developing too slowly. In 3 days, he had once again accumulated over 180 units of spiritual energy and exchanged them for winter melons and potato mines. His plan was simple: gather everyone in a pile and then destroy them. Other than that, he remembered that he still had Yilan in his arsenal, which would easily destroy the uninvited guests. Qi Yuzhou was stunned by the new sect member's words. Clenching his fists, he couldn't understand why he should be afraid, if even a rookie wasn't afraid. Therefore, climbing up with his feet on his sword, the blonde decided to ask for help from the current sect leader and immediately went to fulfill this. Jiang Wei, on the other hand, headed out to greet the guests who had already been waiting for him for a long time. Meanwhile, Qi Yuzhou arrived at the main hall where the acting sect leader was. After entering the hall, he bowed and addressed Jiang Ziyue, saying that he had some urgent news for her. Jiang Ziyue, who was busy with paperwork, was not happy about the guy's arrival. Looking at the girl, Qi Yuzhou was surprised. He knew that Jiang Ziyue had been dealing with the internal affairs of the sect lately, but he noticed that her cultivation was not standing still. He was amazed that the innate purple qi in Jiang Ziyue's body was cultivating on its own. Therefore, the purple qi was refining spiritual energy and cultivating every second. He was amazed at what the girl's true strength was. Jiang Ziyue inquired what business he had come to see her for. Qi Yuzhou reported to her that Prince Tianlang and his followers, having heard that a new junior disciple had a holy medicine, had gathered at the mountain gate to forcefully take it away. Therefore, he came to ask the current sect leader for justice. Jiang Ziyue did not possess a calm temperament. Upon hearing the guy's words, she declared that it was not befitting for Prince Tianlang to behave in such a manner. She pointed out that with this kind of behavior, Prince Tianlang, being a genius, was robbing and stealing from others, and such a thing was considered shameful in the sect. Therefore, she announced that she would not condone such behavior to anyone and would go with the guy to the place of conflict. She decided to ask who that new disciple was and why his master didn't stop the conflict. Qi Yuzhou confessed that the new disciple was Wang Fa. He also revealed that Wang Fa had reached some level of development by swallowing the sacred medicine. In addition, Elder Ma of Weapon Purification Pavilion was currently busy maintaining spiritual energy for the elders and the sect leader, so he temporarily cannot deal with his new disciple. However, after hearing his story, the girl sat back in her seat. Qi Yuzhou was surprised and didn't understand why she sat back in her seat and was already in no hurry to go anywhere. Jiang Ziyue announced that let Wang Fa learn a valuable lesson from this incident. She seemed to be offended that he refused to join Sword Pavilion. But is she really so offended by him that she is willing to just get rid of such a talent for the sect like this? The interim sect leader was too vindictive. And that's all for today. Thank you very much for watching the video. If you would like to see a sequel, please like, subscribe to the channel, and leave your wishes in the comments. You can also subscribe to Telegram to know about new videos. Bye everybody.